Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another show and another episode of our preview series on the Let's Talk Arsenal show. I hope you're doing good. Hope you're doing well. Good evening, everybody in the chat box joining us. Thank you so much for tuning in and for our look ahead to the game tomorrow against Watford. As always with these shows, I'm going to be joined by some of the members from our Discord server. You can join our Discord server, of course, by becoming a member, either an expert member or a TGT ambassador. Let's welcome our guest today. First of all, it's Jared. You all right, mate? You doing good? You doing well?
Doing good. Good to see you. How you doing, sir?
Yeah, not bad. Not bad. I don't know if anyone's been able to go on Twitter yet and watch what has been described as one of the greatest goals of all time.
The Thierry TC debut. Yeah. I did catch this. Yeah.
Bailey was very, very, what's the word? Complimentary, shall we say, in his commentary of that goal. Yeah. If you haven't gone and watched it yet, do go and watch our six-a-side video on the Arsenal way. It's a good laugh to watch, and Bailey puts on quite a performance in the commentary box. We're also joined by Alex. How you doing, mate? You doing good?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. Just taking a break from Foot Champs. FIFA.
Honestly, I can't describe to you how good it is not playing FIFA anymore. Like, the fact that the weekend gets taken up by FUT Champs is just not something I ever want to involve myself in again, to be honest.
No, well, I've said that every year, and yet here we are spending money on it every year. So
I don't. Basically, how I describe it is I realised that, and I know it seems really obvious when you say it back, but I realised that you spend money to improve your team. And to be honest, you're limited by how good you are at the game, no matter what kind of team you really have. Like, I remember used to going like, oh, they're only winning because they've got X, Y, and Z. But to be honest, most of the time they are just better than you. And you just have to hold your hands up and be humble and say, I'm just worse at the game than this person. I know it feels like you're being screwed over, but it's absolutely pointless. And you can there's so many ridiculous cards for players now these days too. Like you get like 3 weeks into the game and Matteo Guendouzi is a 97. Like what's the point? Anyway, before I go off any more rants about FUT Champs, let's bring in our final member, and of course making his debut on the show, it's Hamza. How you doing, Hamza? You good?
Great. Thanks for having me.
No problem at all. Where are you based, by the way?
Minnesota, USA.
Oh, nice. Lovely stuff. We're splitting it today, 2 UK, 2 US. Lovely to see. Hope you're joining us in the chat box wherever you happen to be in the world as well. Do drop a like on the video if you would be so kind. We start off today with a slight deviation, not talking about Watford. And Jared's already chastised me for my poor preparation in sending a link to a video that's 15 minutes long, 13 minutes before we went live. But a lot of you may have seen an interview done by Akil of the Arsenal Supporters Trust with Granit Xhaka talking about online abuse. And it's obviously something that we talk about quite a lot on the channel is online abuse and the social side of being an Arsenal fan. Now, Jared, I know you've not been able to see the whole thing. Totally my fault, obviously. But what do you think about kind of this situation now with 2022? It's a very sensitive world right now, especially with what's going on in the East. It's a really concerning time, and yet still we're seeing some crazy stories about abuse online. I saw videos of Chelsea fans chanting Roman Abramovich's name when the applause was being given to the time to show support and a unity, I suppose, between fans and those that are fighting in Ukraine. It's mental to me still that we're having these conversations.
Yeah, and I saw the chance too about Roman, and it's pretty ridiculous. People think we hate Chelsea because they buy their titles and they're a rival, but take the footballing side out of it. They are forever doing something to irritate everyone and just silly things like this. As far as the Xhaka piece, I did get through about half of it, and I kind of jokingly said to you guys when we came on, if ever there's an authority to talk about online abuse, it's Granit Xhaka, because he takes the brunt of it on the Arsenal end. But it's unfortunate, but one of those things I don't think is going to be ended anytime soon or ever. Sort of the anonymity of Twitter gives people a lot of legs to stand on. In the early part, one thing he did mention that stood out to me is, you have people say things to you that if they walk past you on the street, they would absolutely never say to your face. And, it's sad but true. I think most people he runs into on the street are probably just fine, want a picture, very supportive, but you go to the other side on the internet where everybody can create an account that has one follower that they've had for a day and just say absolutely anything they want to anybody. And things are going to get pretty ugly pretty quick. And unfortunately, I don't really see any end in sight to that. So it's just unfortunately the world we live in now.
Absolutely. I mean, Alex, from your perspective, do you see, like, I mean, as someone who's, you're not wildly on social media, of course, and obviously you're very much attached to the Discord server as well, and thankfully we have a very good Discord server where there's barely ever any issues. But I mean, have you seen, from your perspective, issues growing around Arsenal fandom and abuse online still?
Yeah, I mean, you can see it every time any team loses, and that's the unfortunate part of it, is that fans have such a polarized view of what goes on that if their team loses, then that's their entire weekend ruined, and they've got to take it out on somebody. And it's pretty horrific, really. But with the Xhaka video, I think he's right. There's a lot of people who would just ask him for an autograph if they saw him in the street, who then go home and hide behind a Twitter account or whatever. I just try to stay off Twitter because it's just so much. It's very frustrating. And I've got enough frustration playing FIFA, so I don't need to go across and start playing, start going on Twitter. But no, I think it's difficult because there just isn't going to be an end to it, because the social media companies, it's not within their interest to stop people from creating accounts, because that's how they make money. So it's sad, really, but that's part of the world that we're living in, with the easy access of anybody.
I mean, Alex, you raised the point that I was going to bring on too with Hamza, which is the powers that be, Hamza, that don't do enough. The social media companies that basically remove copyright within seconds, and yet there's not things in place to remove comments or to act upon accounts that are being abusive. I mean, I was talking to Danny, I don't know if people watched our chat on our Let's Talk Arsenal fan series, where we spoke about, as creators, you have to input words that are blocked in the live chat, and you're having to write these awful words yourselves and take ownership over that, when really you're thinking, why is it my job to do this? Why is this already not in place? Why am I having to come up and think of all the horrible things that people might say in the chat box? Do you feel like there's, again, not enough being done to try and curb this?
I mean, yeah, in today's day and age, like, even if you're playing, like, say, a video game and you have an obscene name, they have some way of screening it or something. So it's like, I don't know, the fact that these people are able to, and this is a mental illness for sure. If you're attacking somebody over a game, ultimately, a complete stranger who's never done anything to you. Granted, Xhaka, by all accounts, is a stand-up guy, right? And because of his performances, people decide to attack him. And to a lesser degree, kind of Alba received the same level of hate when his performances began to drop. They wanted him to lose captaincy for performances, whereas, like, he should have lost it because he's just irresponsible and just, he wasn't a good fit. But yeah, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate.
It is indeed. I mean, if you get through the video towards the end of it, he talks very brashly about kind of death threats towards his family and stuff like that, and how he actually ends up saying, like, I'd rather you just sent it towards me. Like, why get involved my family? And the fact it shouldn't even be that case where you're having to provide yourself as a human shield to the rest of your family. It shouldn't be happening anyway. But it's something that we expose ourselves to a lot on the channel. We talk about it a lot. I mean, I see it quite often going on other channels, because thankfully from my perspective, I feel like with the responsibility with the chat box to take ownership over it and block people. We don't have warning systems. If people are abusive, they're just blocked. And, I've had a lot of people message me, to be fair, who've been blocked and apologize for what they said. And, then we've changed back, and I'm all for, like, having second chances and forgiveness and all of that rather than cancelling. But you need to take that ownership. And it's interesting that Latvian Gooner says here, just before becoming a member, by the way, which is welcome to the family, by the way, mate. Latvian Gooner says these keyboard warriors are just insane. They can say what they want without any accountability in real life. They would get their heads kicked in, which, theoretically speaking, I mean, Granit Xhaka, I wouldn't say, as Jared says, any of the stuff that you see. And you imagine he's the type that would certainly give it back in a more physical sense. But I see it on other channels, like when people send abuse my way, I'm like, why don't you come onto the channel, give me your thoughts on this face to face? Do they ever take up the opportunity? Of course they don't. Of course they won't come onto the channel. It's just the way that the world works. But hopefully it's something that we can start to see progress in. Hopefully more people take ownership. And if you do end up seeing it, people, report it and tell people when you do see it. And it's always better to kind of report it before you take things into your own hands and get yourself involved in things. It's better to just try and raise it. So do that. Anyway, we've gone for 10 minutes already. Sorry, Alex, go on, mate.
I was just going to say, only very briefly, because I know we haven't got long, to add to Hamza's point, I think. Oh no, I've completely gone blank. Well, you go.
No. If it comes back to you, we'll grab it. But no, there's no pressure on time, so it's fine.
There we go. It's come back.
Go for it.
I've derailed it. Right. So, what I was going to say, sorry, is I think there's a point where it doesn't become about football anymore, and that is one of the problems that people have, is where you draw the line. And there's nothing wrong with having an opinion on a player with regards to if you don't like the way they play or you think that they're responsible in the way that they play. Like, I'm all for people not liking Xhaka for his constantly getting sent off and that sort of thing. But when you get to the point where you're attacking someone's personal life or somebody personally, that's when it becomes unacceptable. And it's the same in social media, like having a debate with somebody and having them just slate you for no reason whatsoever about who you are or whatever it might be. I think that's where the problems lie a lot of the time.
I think people
don't
struggle
have any
to
control.
Kind of see, they struggle, don't they, to see the difference between criticism, like, and excuse my French because I'm going to swear here, but if you say XYZ player is shit, like, saying that still is abuse. Like, you may not be like you think it's all that bad and say it because in passing and between your mates or in WhatsApp groups, how you speak is very different. But, when you've got, and you think about your one small speck amongst millions, or in these cases, hundreds or thousands of people that are posting that or commenting that on Instagram posts and saying that, it adds up and it does make more of a difference. And people need to think about that. And it's not about being snowflakes, as some people like to describe it, which is a ridiculous term in itself anyway, and kind of highlights the ridiculous personalities of the people that feel it's okay and that would encourage this type of behavior. It's about actually, having a real stand-up personality yourself and be able to be critical without crossing that line. You can be critical. No one's saying that you can't turn around and say, I don't think XYZ player is good enough and I think we should be looking to buying someone better. There's nothing wrong with that. But you need to be able to coherently put your point across. So there you go. Cowards, I think, is the word. I see that coming out quite a lot in the chat box. Let's move the focus ahead to Watford, and obviously the reason why we're here to talk about that. Jared, we've had 9 days since our big win against Wolves. Do you see that being a little bit of an issue for Arsenal, being that so much time off? Do you think they could lead to a little bit of staleness in the squad, or do you think that they're still going to be riding high off that win?
At this point, I'm not too worried about them being stale or out of form. I think having a good break between games keeps everybody at 100%. Everybody's healthy, other than maybe Tomiyasu, who would want to have in there. And I think they should be in good spirits. They don't have, it's unfortunate we're out of the cup competitions, but as it is, we've got plenty of time in between games where we can give our sole focus to the upcoming league opponent, do all of our preparations specifically for that opponent. And with that said, there should be no excuses. We should be a team that's out there ready, willing, and able every single game right now. And, an away game in the league is never a gimme. But when you look at Watford, it's one that we should get a result from. So, I'm feeling relatively confident going into tomorrow that they're going to go out there, perform well, and get a result.
Oh, I'm on mute. Classic mistake. Yeah, I think it's one where you're hoping to see, you're hoping to see a team motivate. You're hoping to see a team that's going to really get us going. But there is always that fear, Alex, that we will go into this game and see, the Arsenals that have struggled in the past and that have gone to Watford and struggled to get goals. And are you confident in seeing an Arsenal that have created a lot of chances but not necessarily scored them, be able to take the rhetoric and go to there and get a good win?
I think we have to, in a way, because if we're serious about qualifying for the top 4 and we want to attract the sort of players that we're going to get from getting Champions League and back into Europe, I think we have to beat teams like Watford, with no disrespect to them, but it is the reality is the teams in the bottom 10, we should be beating them comfortably, and that's what I would expect from us at the minute. I think we've been defensively relatively sound, with a few games where we've made our errors, but obviously we're very well versed in playing with 10 men this season, so hope there's not a repeat of that. But I think that's one of the main issues you see is we create so many chances, which was one of the things that a lot of people were bearing issue with, is that we weren't creating enough. So I don't think we've got any problem with creativity, but we're having to see players like Smith Rowe and Saka, who both said they've worked hard on their shooting, and we need them to score because at the moment Lacazette's sort of very patchy in his form, but my lineup will reflect how I feel about some of the other players on the bench who might be able to have a bit of an influence on the game.
Yeah, there are questions, ironically, about kind of the lineup, which is interesting, Hamza, because we've had such a consistent team, because we've not really been playing cup football. We've had only the league to focus on. We've not had too many injuries. However, there are some question marks about, say, Martinelli, Smith Rowe, who should start there. Does Pepe deserve to come back in after he had such a good performance when he came off the bench against Wolves? But do you think that Mikel Arteta will kind of have the game plan in mind well ahead of things and is going to be tempted not necessarily to change too much after that Wolves win?
Well, yeah, considering the opponent is, Watford, and I think we should, be able to handle them pretty easily. As Alex said, this is a game we have to win. We have Leicester, Liverpool, and after the way Villa looked tonight, I think these next 3 games, are going to be super tough. So it's like, have to get 3 points here. And I think we have a pretty good situation with Pepe, Smith Rowe, and Martinelli, because it's like all 3 of them, you can make an argument for them starting, and I would not, bat an eye if either of them started tomorrow on that left side. But Odegaard and Saka all day, man. All day.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be a discussion about Pepe and whether or not he deserves a chance, and we can have that when we go through the lineups for sure. But with Watford, Jared, Hamza raises the point that this is a must-win game for us, as is pretty much all of our games for the rest of the season. But you look at the fixtures coming up, you look at what Man United have right now. They had that game against Watford that you would have banked on them getting 3 points ahead of what was a really tough run of fixtures and what is still. I mean, they play Man City tomorrow, of course. Do you see them still very much being very hard to break down? Do you expect Roy Hodgson to kind of set up of a low block and absorb pressure and try and hit on the break? Or do you think that they'll just play the way that they can and try and use players like Emmanuel Dennis, etc., to get the best opportunities for them?
I think it's very much the former. I expect them to sit back and us to have the majority of the ball, but that's where they're dangerous. I know Sarr is out, but with King and Dennis, they're still a very dangerous team. They've got established Premier League goal scorers, and you can't take those guys lightly. So I think it's important for us to be aggressive, maintain possession, but not overextend ourselves a little bit just to kind of offset that threat. But if we're able to do that, I don't think it's a team that we would have a major issue with. I don't know that we're going to go out and bag 4 goals against them, but I could easily see us getting a 1-0, 2-0 victory and having it be relatively comfortable, which is something we haven't been able to say over the last, in the previous years. The defense has been very sound for the most part, sans Gabriel shutting off for about 10 seconds in the last game. They've been quite good. So like I said, it's a game I expect us to have most of the ball, control the possession for most of it, and go out there and get a win.
Absolutely. Just seeing what you guys are saying in the chat box. Lavi and Gooner says Hodgson usually sets up good no matter what Arsenal he plays against. Not having Sarr helps us with how we'll push with Tierney up forwards. Quick goal is going to be essential. Do you think that's true, Alex? Do you think it's going to be about a really early goal? Do you feel like if, say, we go in at halftime and we've not yet scored, we could be in for a really difficult day? Or do you think it's going to be more of a war of attrition that Arsenal eventually win out?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what people have said. I don't think we can take them lightly. However, getting an early goal is always going to be a bonus for us because it settles everyone down, and we've shown that when we tend to get a goal, we don't tend to sit back, as I feel like we have done in the past. I think we tend to push on a little bit more. Getting a goal in the first half, certainly. I always feel nervous at half time if it's 0-0 and the last thing, and Watford are going to be well drilled. Roy Hodgson's teams always are. In Arteta's press conference, he was talking about how much he loves Roy Hodgson. So, you know what to expect, but can you do anything about it? So that's what we need to make sure that we are prepared properly. and that we're starting with the right players, and he makes his substitutions at the right time if we're struggling, which he has done quite well with recently.
Yeah, recently.
Yeah, recently. Yeah, no, I say recently for a good reason.
Yeah, the in-game management was always kind of the area of Arteta's game that I think a lot of fans rightly have criticised of Arteta, and we've wanted it to be better. But I think it has been of late, and he has improved on that. Hamza, of the Watford team, who are you kind of looking at that you're really kind of worried about facing? Sarr isn't there, of course, but Dennis has had a really good season since joining them, I think, from Club Bruges in the summer. They've got other players, Moussa Sissoko from Spurs will know all about the importance of this game as well. They haven't got Danny Rose, who we gave a torrid time at the Emirates in the first half of the season. He's moved on, but Kamara playing left back, is an okay player, but Saka you'd think should have enough to beat him. But is there anyone in that team that you really look at as a threat against us?
Yeah, like you said, pretty much Dennis, but it's like just the whole team. I feel like we can influence ourselves against. Roy Hodgson has had, I think, three clean sheets out of the last 6 games. And I think out of the last 36 prior to that, they only had 3 as well. So it's like, I think we're going to have a lot of the ball. It's up to us to implement the game plan against them. And like, for some reason, United and Spurs lose to these type of teams. And we have been getting points from these types of teams. So it's like, despite what we may do against Liverpool, Chelsea, and whatnot down the road, we just need to get these 3 points.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an interesting point you raised there. That's the difference between Arsenal and Spurs and United this season, is that we've picked up points in the games that we were supposed to. And that's something that Arsenal struggled against. Definitely last season, we were dropping points left, right and centre to teams like Burnley. I think we didn't beat Burnley last season. Like, we lost at home and we drew away from home. We had the double over us by Wolves. Villa, I think, also did the double over us too. We dropped points in games that we shouldn't have done if we wanted to get higher up the table. And that's why we're, I think, 11 plus points better off this time than we were last season. It's a big difference, especially when you think that even though we had a really bad season, we only missed out on the top 4 last year despite finishing 8th by about 6 or 7 points. It wasn't that far. So being 11 points better off this campaign shows how much of a difference that can make come May. Let's jump to the lineups then and see what you guys have gone for. Jared, we start with your team, mate. Talk us through it.
So for me right now, especially having a full week off after this game, I kind of went with what I thought was going to be our most effective 11. And that being said, there was really only 2 spots that I had to think about at all, the right back position and the left wing position. As far as the right back, it sounds like Tomiyasu maybe isn't completely fit at this point. I made the point the other day, even if he was completely fit, I would still sit him for this game, give him an extra week of rest, rehab, and all of that. Because at this point, Watford is a game that we should get a result from whether he's in there or not. And with only 14 games left, I want to go with whatever strategy is going to have him playing the maximum number of games in that time. And if that means we have to be a little bit extra cautious with him, I'm okay with that. I've talked about it before. I know you've talked about it on the show before. He has a little bit of a spotty injury record. So I think we should take that into consideration and treat him with a little extra care than we would some other guys. So he's around when we play. We still have Liverpool, Chelsea, United, Tottenham left, and I'd much rather see him available for those 4 games than I would Watford. So that's why I opted for Cedric here, whether Tomiyasu is healthy or not. The rest of it, the midfield, Xhaka and Partey and Odegaard, that one for me is about as straightforward as it could be. Those 3 have been fantastic. We're on a good run. I see no reason to change it. And then Saka and Lacazette, kind of the same thing. We're on a good run. I don't see us making any major shakeups in those spots. So the only other question for me was on the left wing, whether it would be Martinelli or Smith Rowe. And I can see an argument for both players. For me, Smith Rowe has paired up better with Tierney than Martinelli's paired up with Tierney. So I think that's important. He's very good moving inside when Tierney overlaps. And more than anything, I think if you're leading the team in goals, I want you on the pitch as much as possible, just as a general matter. So in that regard, he kind of picks himself for me. And I think this is a team that I would pick, and I also think it's one that we're relatively likely to see tomorrow.
I think what we're going to see is, obviously, and you'll see this in the differences, there's only ever so slight changes in these teams, and I think that's going to be the main talking point. So, Alex, you've swapped out Saka for Pepe, so talk us through that decision.
Well, I mean, I'll just sort of reiterate, I could just as easily have started Saka there. I think... there's a lot to be said for bringing either of them off the bench if the other's not working. But Pepe scored in the last game. I think he deserves a start. So I don't think it's not out of resting Saka, because every Premier League footballer should be able to play a game a week, which is what we're sort of on at the minute. Well, we're not, obviously, it's been a bit longer, but in general, you're thinking a game a week. I think he'd cause Camera a lot of problems just as much, or say just as much, is probably slightly overstating, but I think he'll cause Camera a lot of problems. I've started Smith Rowe because he's our highest goal scorer, and if it was a striker, everyone would be saying, why is he not starting every week? So why would we not start him every week, in my opinion? I love Martinelli, but he's not scoring goals at the moment, and we need goals. I think having Cedric, I'm obviously, as people may know from past shows, I'm not the biggest fan of Cedric. However, it has to be said that those sort of long diagonal switches over to the left wing, and with Xhaka sort of sitting in that sort of half space on the left hand side doing the same thing to the right, I think that's one of the prime things that I've looked at that has been a very effective way of moving the ball quickly, which is, I think, something we've struggled with in certain parts of games where we're just passing it too slowly. And, Ben White's been fantastic, but sometimes he takes so long on the ball that it closes down passing lanes rather than opening things up. And I think having those long switches is a difference between just sort of passing it in that sort of C shape around the edge of the box. And if they're going to be in a low block, maybe that's something that might be an effective way of quickly turning them around.
Alex saying there, why on earth would you not start Smith Rowe? Well, Hamza, you can talk us through that very exact answer, mate.
Hey, listen, I love Martin. I love all of them. I love all of them. The only reason Gabby's not getting the goals right now, but I think of all the wide players in the league, I think he leads in pressures per 90. You know what I mean? So as far as what Arteta is trying to do with the press from the front, him and Odegaard are getting it done at the moment. And yeah, Smith Rowe is our leading scorer, but he's also our leading scorer coming off the bench. So it's like, if he's continuing to just, absolutely run through people in the second half, let's do it. Let's continue doing it. You know what I mean? Ever since that Everton game where we sat back and paid the price, we have been a very positive team going forward in the second half. So it's like, I definitely want to see what Pepe and Odegaard can add if we're missing that little extra bit of, creativity.
Yeah, absolutely. What about the rest of the team? Is it, as the boys have said, is it picking?
Oh, yeah. The rest of the team, Partey and Xhaka, don't even have to say anything about that. Center back partnership, nothing. Cedric, I would say Tomiyasu should probably sit into Liverpool just to be safe. Tierney's struggling right now.
I was going to say, that's the other position, isn't it, that I think that we could have a debate about, is whether or not Tierney should be dropped, because he's struggled a bit, as you said there. Would you not be tempted to give Nuno Tavares a go?
I think if it was December, we should do it. You know what I mean? But I think there's a little bit of a question mark whether he can play behind Martinelli, because I think those early games, Villa, Leicester, Watford, Newcastle, when he was starting those 90 minutes, it was all Smith Rowe in front of him, if I recall correctly.
It was, yeah.
So it's like, I don't know how that's going to work. And we got all these cup finals, right? So it's like we have to play our strongest team if we're going to get rest in between. So it's like Tierney's a guy at the moment. So
absolutely. Yeah. In the chat box, Tim Jello saying, really like that team too. And neither has had Martinelli, who we all love. This is exactly what we've needed for so long, having too many good players to fit in the starting 11. Gregory, though, pointing out that Cedric has been pulling his weight recently. And I think that Cedric certainly has. I don't think he's made himself look out of place. I don't think he stands out as a player that we desperately need to move out of the team right now. He has done in the past. The Nottingham Forest game sticks in my mind very much so. But he's showing in these games what he can offer. And I think he's offering us something a bit more going forwards on that right-hand side. I think he's supporting Saka very, very well. And he's overlapping Saka usually, which he doesn't really get with Tomiyasu. So he's getting a little bit more freedom and space created for him. So there's a lot to be positive about. In terms of what I've gone for, I was in line with Jared. I've moved in Smith Rowe for Martinelli and kept everything else the same. I think that Smith Rowe and Tierney work well together. I think that Tierney plays better when he's got Smith Rowe playing with him as well. I think that Martinelli, the issue is that because Martinelli plays so far out wide at times, Tierney doesn't get to overlap like he would usually do. And Smith Rowe, because he's more attuned to drift slightly inside, because naturally that's where he wants to be, is that number 10 style player. So it gives Tierney more space, and the reverse passes to the overlapping work really, really well as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing what we do go with. I kind of expect this to be the team, even though these are our desired 11s, not predicted. I do think this is what he would go for. Nicolas Pepe maybe has a chance, and he spoke very, positively about him when he returned from the African Cup of Nations. So maybe there's a chance he comes into this team, but I think this is probably what we will see, which means we now move on to the final part of the show, which is predictions. So chat box, start to get those score lines in. We're going to go in reverse order. Hamza, scoreline and scorers, please.
2-0. I'm going to have to say Martinelli because I'm starting him, right? So
yeah,
Martinelli
absolutely.
And Smith Rowe off the bench.
Lovely stuff. Just to completely destroy your argument, basically. To self-sabotage.
Hey, listen, this is what I do.
Love it. Alex?
I'll go with 4-0.
Wow.
Emil Smith Rowe getting a hat-trick. And, Aaron Ramsdale from a corner, because we'll bring him up in the 90th minute, 3-0.
Why? No, we wouldn't, would we? No.
Well, no, but I was going to say Cedric would score, but I just feel like...
But Ramsdale's more likely, is this what you're saying?
Wow.
That may be the case.
Yeah, absolutely. Jared?
I'm going to go 2-0 to the Arsenal. Goal scorers, I think Lacazette's finally going to get one that's not an own goal. He'll put one through on his own, and then I like Smith Rowe to score another. He's on a good run and good form, and I think he'll be pretty active in their box tomorrow.
Lovely stuff. Yeah, I went for 3-0. It's so positive, isn't it? We're going to Watford, which is not an easy place to go. Teams have dropped points, and we've just watched Man United really struggle to get the ball in the net against them. And we're going for these high score lines. But yeah, I'm confident. I like watching Arsenal at the moment. It's really enjoyable, and it gives you that confidence going into these games. So yeah, I'm going to go 3-0 with Lacazette to get a goal, Smith Rowe as well, and Thomas Partey from outside the box, just because it needs to happen at some stage. It was interesting that Arteta was asked about that in his press conference as well, so maybe we'll start to see it actually finally happen. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat box. Omar saying 2-0 to the Arsenal Ramsdale brace. Well, I don't know what this theme is reoccurring in the chat box. Hovik saying 3-1 Arsenal. Wilson saying the prediction is 2-0 to the Arsenal. Latvian Gooner going for a 3-1 win. Penny Wing going for a 5-0. Lacazette hat-trick involved in that as well. Arsenal Granny going 2-0. Pablo saying 3-0 to the Arsenal. Anthony going with a 2-0 as well. Super Nicholas going 3-1 to the Arsenal. Craig going 2-0. Bobby going 2-1. Steve saying also 2-1 with Smith Rowe and Saka to get the goals. Temmie says 3-0 Arsenal win. Ramsdale late header. I'm just not enjoying this Ramsdale hype. It's mad. DMC says 3-1. Nicholas says 3-1. MIR Reaction says 2-0 with Laka to get on the score sheet. Vinny's going for a Xhaka screamer. He's very much on the Xhaka hype, is our boy Vinny at the moment. And we have to say, Hamza's got to say a big thank you to Vinny because he's been pestering. I say thank you. You can say thank you, or you can just berate him if you like for just pestering people constantly. Come on the show. Get on the show. Aren't you going on the show in the Discord server? He's my little minion and he's doing good. Some bloke 2-1. It's the new 1-0 to the Arsenal is what 2-1 has become. Patrick saying 1-0 to the Arsenal, part of a shot from long range. Agree with me there. Marley 2-0 Arsenal, Smith Rowe and Pepe from the bench. And also a Partey long shot prediction from Mitch with a 3-1 win. We're getting more predictions in as well. Sorry, you can't go through all of them. I would be here for a very long time reading them out. Thank you all so much. Appreciate the kind comments. And there you go. Vinny taking all the credit for Hamza's appearance there. Lovely stuff.
He's a legend.
He is. He's the Discord legend. This is just what he does. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. It's been an absolute pleasure. I believe the Highbury squad are also live with Kevin Campbell. So once you finish watching here, go over and tune into Sophie's show because they're doing some really good stuff over there. Do drop a like on the video and subscribe if you're new. Jared, thank you so much, mate, for coming on the show. Tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a good time as always. You can find me over on the Gooners pod, and you can find me on Twitter right down there. It's at JC_AFC. And if you're in the Chicagoland area, you can find me this afternoon taking in a little MLS football. Chicago Fire home opener, first game for Shaqiri, so it should be a good one.
Oh yeah, nice, love that. That's going to be great. Yeah, I never get around to watching MLS. I always watch the highlights, but yeah, I need to start staying up for some of the games. I mean, Atlanta are my team, so I mean that's basically glory hunting from when they were just winning. And I really liked Martinez up top, so that was really the only reason. And Almiron, of course, before he moved off.
You're the equivalent of an American Manchester City fan, basically.
Yeah, that's
going the
basically
other direction.
what I've done. I mean, I'm an Arsenal fan here, so I've got to give myself something. Like,
that's fair.
And to be fair, they've not been that great. I mean, Martinez was seriously injured for a long time. That really did scupper their plans. So that's me being that one. Alex, thank you so much, mate. Tell people where they can find you.
You can find me on the Discord server if you want to. No, of course you want to. It's a great community, and you get to come on the show, which is always a pleasure. So
absolutely.
Cheers,
no, thank you, mate. Absolutely was a pleasure to speak. Hamza, fantastic debut, mate. You've broken your duck. It's easy, isn't it? It was fine. There was no problem at all.
Yep. You know, it only took Vin, sending me about 1 billion messages, but I finally made my debut. You know what I mean?
It's the thing. If anything, it's a good thing to come on the show because it gets Vinny off your back for like a couple of weeks at least, and they'll be back on you again. But no, thank you, Hamza. Tell people where they can find you, mate.
Literally just a Discord, you know what I mean? And I play a lot of foot champs as well, so bought on my tires on PlayStation, you know what I mean? So
PlayStation.
Hey, I got Xbox as well. I got both.
Oh, fair. He's got on both. He's not like that. I was watching. I think I was watching the Actman's video on like console wars, and then I saw he got so much hate for his video he did on console wars. It was ridiculous. I find him really funny. I think he's hilarious. So yeah, that's one to watch for sure. We really went in on PlayStation fanboys though, and it was quite an entertaining watch. To be fair, I think got over like 500k views. So he's really annoyed people to this point. Yeah, but as Peony Ween says in the chat, Xbox all the way. And I've just downloaded Dying Light 2, so I'm going to be giving that a play this evening. That's going to be my evening while the missus is away.
For the Xbox fans, you get Guardians of the Galaxy on Game Pass now too. So
really? I'll have to check that one out. And we get Halo Infinite, although that's not really been going so well recently. It's a live service game with no live service is what that is, with no updates ever since launch, which is ridiculous. But yeah, it's a real shame how that's going. Oh, we're gonna start console wars in the chat box now. It's I can already see this happening. If you want to carry on the console wars, you can probably do that in the Discord server, which is, we do have a gaming channel, to be fair, in the Discord server, so you can carry it on over there. Thank you so much for tuning in. Sorry we went off a bit of a tangent towards the end there, but it's what we do. We will see you soon. Have a fantastic evening, and as always, up the Arsenal.